A lion terrorizes a village, but the real reason will blow your mind. What you'll see in this video will change everything you think about animals. On a scorching afternoon in the remote village of Kambali, nestled deep in the heart of the African savannah, the golden sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty streets. The village, home to fewer than 300 souls, it thrived 4 generations in harmony with the surrounding wilderness. Children played in the shade of ancient baobab trees, while their mothers tended to crops of maize and millet. The men gathered at the village center, sharing stories and planning the day's work. But on this particular day, an ominous tension hung in the air like the oppressive heat itself. The village elder, a weathered man in his 70s, with deep-set eyes that had witnessed countless seasons, stood before the gathered community. His voice carried the weight of grave concern as he addressed the worried faces before him. "Beast has struck again," he announced, his words cutting through the humid air. "This morning we found 3 more goats missing from the southern edge of the village. The tracks are unmistakable. It's the same lion that has been terrorizing our community for weeks." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mothers pulled their children closer, while the men exchanged worried glances. This was no ordinary predator-prey relationship that had existed for centuries between the villagers and the wild. Something had changed. Something that filled even the bravest hunters with an inexplicable dread. The lion in question was a magnificent but terrifying creature. Standing nearly 4 feet at the shoulder with a mane that seemed to catch fire in, the African sun. The villagers had nicknamed him Simba Achawai, the magic lion, for his uncanny ability to appear and disappear like a specter. Unlike other lions they had encountered, this one showed no fear of humans, no hesitation in approaching their settlements. Maria Santos, young veterinarian who had arrived in the village 3 months earlier as part of a wildlife conservation program, stood at the edge of the crowd. She had dedicated her life to understanding animal behavior, but this situation baffled her. The lion's actions defied everything she knew about predator patterns. Lions typically avoided human settlements, unless driven by extreme desperation or old age that made hunting their natural prey impossible. "We must organize hunting parties," declared one of the village's most skilled hunters. A muscular man whose scars told stories of previous encounters with dangerous wildlife. "This lion has lost its fear of humans. It will only grow bolder." Elder raised his hand for silence. "We have tried hunting parties. The lion eludes us at every turn. It's as if the creature knows our every move before we make it." As the meeting continued, children pressed their faces against windows, listening to the adults debate their fate. The youngest ones didn't fully understand the gravity of the situation, but they sensed the fear in their parents' voices. School had been canceled for the past week. Children were forbidden from playing outside without adult supervision. The lion's reign of terror had begun 6 weeks earlier. At first, it was just livestock. A goat here, a chicken there. Nothing unusual for a village on the edge of the wilderness. But then the pattern became more disturbing. The lion would circle the village at dawn and dusk, its golden eyes visible in the tall grass that bordered their homes. It would roar a sound that echoed through the valley like thunder, sending shivers down the spines of even the most courageous villagers. What made this lion particularly terrifying was its intelligence. It seemed to study the villagers' routines, learning their patterns, their weaknesses. Traps were avoided with supernatural cunning. Hunters would track it for miles, only to find themselves being hunted in return. The lion would appear behind them, watching, waiting, then vanish into the wilderness before they could react. Dr. Santos had been documenting the lion's behavior, trying to understand what drove this magnificent predator to such unusual aggression. Her notebooks were filled with observations that challenged everything she had learned in veterinary school. The lion's movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic. It would appear at specific times, in specific locations, as if following some internal compass that guided its actions. On the night of the latest attack, Dr. Santos had been awakened by the sound of terrified bleating. She had rushed to her window to see the lion standing in the moonlight, a goat in its powerful jaws. But what struck her most was not the kill itself. It was the lion's behavior afterward. Instead of devouring its prey immediately, The lion had looked directly at her window, as if it knew she was watching. Their eyes met across the moonlit distance, and Dr. Santos felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool night air. The next morning brought devastating news. The lion had not only killed livestock, but had also damaged the village's only well, somehow managing to contaminate their primary water source. This was not random destruction. It was systematic, calculated, as if the lion was trying to force the villagers to abandon their homes. As fear gripped the community, rumors began to spread. Some villagers whispered that the lion was not a natural creature, but a spirit sent to punish them for some forgotten transgression. Others believed it was a shapeshifter, a human who could transform into a lion at will. The more rational villagers dismissed these stories as superstition, but even they couldn't explain the lion's inexplicable behavior. Dr. Santos knew she had to take action. As a scientist, she refused to accept supernatural explanations for what was clearly a biological phenomenon. There had to be a logical reason for the lion's behavior, and she was determined to find it. Against the wishes of the village elder and the protests of the other villagers, she decided to venture into the wilderness to study the lion more closely. Her plan was simple but dangerous. She would use a tranquilizer gun to sedate the lion, then examine it for signs of disease or injury that might explain its erratic behavior. Rabies was a possibility, though the lion's calculated actions seemed too deliberate for a rabid animal. Brain tumors could cause aggressive behavior, but again, the lion's intelligence suggested something else entirely. On a humid evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Dr. Santos prepared for her expedition. Her veterinary equipment, tranquilizer gun, and emergency supplies. The villagers gathered to watch her departure, their faces a mixture of admiration and fear for the brave woman who was willing to confront their tormentor. "You don't have to do this," the elder said, his voice heavy with concern. "The lion has already taken enough from us. We cannot afford to lose you too." Dr. Santos smiled grimly. "If I don't try to understand this animal, the terror will never end. There's something driving its behavior, something we're missing. I have to find out what it is." As darkness fell over the savannah, Dr. Santos made her way toward the area where the lion had last been spotted. The night was alive with sounds, the distant hyena calls, the rustling of small creatures in the grass, the soft hooting of owls. But beneath it all was a deeper silence, as if the entire ecosystem was holding its breath. She didn't have to wait long. The lion appeared as if materializing from the darkness itself, its golden eyes reflecting the moonlight like twin flames. It stood perfectly still, studying her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. This was no ordinary predator. There was something almost human in its gaze, an intelligence that seemed to pierce through her very soul. Dr. Santos raised her tranquilizer gun, her hands trembling slightly. The lion watched her movements but made no attempt to flee or attack. It simply stood there as if waiting for something. The standoff lasted for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, Dr. Santos pulled the trigger. The tranquilizer dart hit its target, but instead of fleeing, the lion lay down where it stood, as if it had been waiting for this moment. As the powerful sedative took effect, the lion's eyes remained fixed on Dr. Santos. She could swear she saw something like relief in its gaze. When the lion was fully sedated, Dr. Santos approached cautiously. What she discovered would change not only her understanding of this particular animal, but her entire perspective on the relationship between humans and wildlife. The lion was not a male, as everyone had assumed, but a female. And she was not alone. Hidden in the lion's thick mane were clear signs of nursing. She was feeding cubs. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. As Dr. Santos examined the lion more closely, she found evidence of multiple injuries, some recent, others that had healed over time. Bullet wounds, snare marks, what appeared to be chemical burns, painted a picture of an animal that had endured incredible suffering. But the most revealing discovery came when Dr. Santos used her portable ultrasound equipment. The lion was not just nursing cubs, she was currently pregnant with another litter. The timing suggested that she had been driven to extreme measures to protect her existing offspring while preparing for new arrivals. As the pieces began to fall into place, Dr. Santos realized that the lion's terrorist behavior was actually desperate maternal protection. The lioness was not attacking the village out of aggression or madness. She was trying to drive the humans away from an area that contained something precious to her. The next morning, Dr. Santos returned to the village with photographic evidence and detailed notes about her examination. The villagers gathered around her, eager to hear what she had discovered about their tormentor. When she revealed that the lion was actually a desperate mother trying to protect her cubs, the crowd fell silent. "She's not terrorizing us," Dr. Santos explained, her voice filled with newfound understanding. "She's trying to keep us away from her cubs. Somewhere in the area we've been expanding into, there's a den with baby lions. She's been systematically trying to make this area uninhabitable for us because she sees us as a threat to her children." The village elder stroked his beard thoughtfully. "But why doesn't she simply move her cubs to a safer location, as lions have done for generations?" Dr. Santos pulled out her photographs showing the lioness's injuries. "Because she can't. Look at these wounds. Bullet wounds, snare marks, chemical burns. She's been through hell. My guess is that her original territory was destroyed or compromised by human activity. This might be the only safe place left for her cubs." As the implications sank in, the villagers' anger began to transform into something else, understanding, and perhaps even compassion. The creature they had viewed as a monster was actually a mother fighting to protect her children in the only way she knew how. But the situation was still dangerous. A desperate lioness was unpredictable. The safety of the village had to be considered. Dr. Santos proposed a solution that would satisfy both the human and animal needs. They would work together to relocate the lioness and her cubs to a protected area where they could live without threatening the village. The plan required the cooperation of the entire community. Using the lioness's own protective instincts, they would create a trail that would lead her away from the village, toward a designated wildlife reserve. It was a risky proposition, but it offered hope for a resolution that didn't end in tragedy for either species. Over the following weeks, the villagers worked with Dr. Santos to implement their plan. They strategically placed scent markers and food sources that would encourage the lioness to move her cubs toward the reserve. The process was slow and required incredible patience, but gradually, the lioness began to respond to their efforts. During this time, Dr. Santos made another remarkable discovery. The lioness's den contained not just her own cubs, but also two orphaned lion cubs from another pride. The mother had been caring for 5 cubs total, explaining her desperate need for resources and her fierce protection of the area. The breakthrough came on a misty morning when Dr. Santos spotted the lioness leading her cubs toward the reserve. The mother carried the smallest cub in her mouth, while the others followed behind, their golden fur barely visible in the tall grass. It was a sight that brought tears to the eyes of even the most hardened villagers. But the story didn't end there. As word spread about the successful relocation, it attracted attention from wildlife conservationists around the world. The village of Kambali became a model for human-wildlife coexistence, showing that understanding and cooperation could resolve conflicts that seemed impossible. Dr. Santos established a permanent research station in the village, monitoring the lioness and her cubs, while also working to prevent similar conflicts in the future. The lioness, now safe in the reserve, thrived with her cubs. Camera traps captured images of the 5 young lions playing and growing under their mother's watchful eye. The village itself was transformed by the experience. What had begun as a terror-filled siege became a source of pride and international recognition. Tourism increased as people came to hear the story of the village that had chosen compassion over conflict. The additional income allowed for improvements in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. 6 months after the lioness's relocation, Dr. Santos received a report that would bring the story full circle. The lioness had been spotted at the edge of the reserve, watching the village from a distance. But this time, she was not alone. All 5 of her cubs, now strong and healthy, stood beside her. For a moment, the mother lion seemed to acknowledge the village that had chosen to understand rather than destroy. The village elder, now in his 80s, would often tell visitors about the day they learned that their monster was actually a mother. "We thought she was our enemy," he would say, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "But she was just trying to be a good mother, just like our own mothers would do for us." As the seasons passed, the story of the lioness became legend in the region. Other villages facing similar conflicts reached out to Dr. Santos for guidance. The model developed in Kambali was adapted and implemented across Africa, saving countless lives, both human and animal. Dr. Santos continued her research, but she never forgot the lesson the lioness had taught her. The natural world was not something to be conquered or feared, but understood and respected. The lioness had shown them that even the most fearsome predator was driven by the same basic instincts that motivated humans: the need to protect and provide for their children. Years later, when Dr. Santos would speak at conferences around the world, she would always conclude with the same message. Sometimes, what we perceive as aggression is actually desperate love. The lioness taught us that before we react with fear or violence, we should always ask ourselves, what is this creature really trying to tell us? The reserve where the lioness lived became a protected area, ensuring that future generations of lions would have a safe place to raise their cubs. The village of Kambali stood as a testament to the power of understanding over fear, cooperation over conflict. Somewhere in the African wilderness, a lioness watched over her cubs, no longer having to choose between their safety and her own survival. The terror had ended not with guns or traps, but with the simple recognition that mothers, whether human or lion, will do anything to protect their children. The story of the lioness and the village became a symbol of hope, proving that even the most impossible conflicts could be resolved when people chose to listen with their hearts instead of reacting with their fears. In a world where human-wildlife conflict was increasing, the village of Kambali showed that another way was possible, a way that honored both the needs of people and the wild creatures that shared their world. As the sun set over the savannah, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, the lioness and her cubs could be seen playing in the distance. Their roars no longer struck terror into the hearts of the villagers, but served as a reminder of the miracle that had transformed fear into understanding and conflict into coexistence. The magic lion had indeed worked magic, not through supernatural power, but through the transformation of human hearts and the recognition that even the fiercest predator was simply trying to survive and protect what they loved most. In the end, that was a magic more powerful than any legend. A magic that had the power to heal the ancient wounds between humans and the natural world.